TVGrace presents the inexpressible words of God, the gospel of grace, on the lips of Jesus Christ man. Abba, Father.
Let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. Why you should not unite yourself with an unbeliever? Because God saves who? The believers. God saves who? So a believer with an unbeliever, well, it doesn't go together, right? So he says here, do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship does righteousness has with unrighteousness? And what communion does light hath with darkness? And what accord Christ with Belial? Or what part has a believer with an unbeliever? And what agreement has the temple of God with idols? Who is the temple of God? We are the temple of God. So what does an idol have to do with the temple? For you are the temple, of the living God, as God has said, I will dwell in them and walk among them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from among them and be separated, saith the Lord, and do not touch the uncleansed, and I will receive you, and I will be a father to you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. Therefore, having these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. God works with precision. If you are a believer for God, God expects you to walk worthy of your calling, because sometimes the believers walk unrighteously, but he's a believer and his position is different because God has already saved them. And once you're in and saved, you're saved forever. Now, if you sow for unrighteous things, you're going to reap unrighteousness. But one thing it is to be a believer, and one thing is to be an unbeliever, and to whom grace has not appeared or been manifest, they're unbelievers. I have Protestant family members that go to church, and in this case, they're unbelievers because they have not believed the gospel. I was a Baptist, but I was an unbeliever. And I was a Catholic, I was an unbeliever. But now there are unbelievers from birth, and there are unbelievers that have not been enlightened. There are two types of unbelievers, because they are the seed of the devil, and some are the seed of God. But God speaks of another type of believer. He's speaking, for instance, Peter was an unbeliever. The apostles were unbelievers because they didn't believe in Paul. If you read Galatians, you can see that Paul said, when Paul came to Antioch, I resist them face to face because he was to be condemned, because they had not believed. They were Judaizing believers, but they were not believers of the gospel. The pastors here in Miami are unbelievers for me because they have not believed the message of grace. For Paul, they are unbelievers. You know why? Because imagine, Paul says that the devil was destroyed, and they say that the devil is alive. How much more of an unbeliever is that? Paul says that you are born saved, and they say that you can lose your salvation. Paul says you can't even begin to think about that. How are you going to lose your salvation if you are born saved? Let's speak about marriage, the unequal or unequally yoked marriages. When a woman is married with an unbeliever, or a man is married to an unbeliever, how that unequally yoked relation affects the relationship. And what I'm going to speak is going to affect the whole world, because in 2,000 years, this had not been explained. And much information is needed to comfort many nations that are suffering. Listen, there are three things I want to point out here. When you are united to a person that's an unbeliever and doesn't believe the gospel, you are affected in three areas: personally, with the family, and in the spiritual sense. Personally, in what form? Well, imagine that when you understand this grace and you begin to declare that you are blessed, and you begin to say, the devil has been destroyed, Christ has removed sin, I am predestined, you're going to have problems with your family. I have problems with my brother, with my sister, with the other. They think I'm crazy. Don't you see that they eat devil in the morning, devils in the afternoon? They take the Holy Communion. I don't dare do something like that. They believe in the baptism in water, that saves someone and helps. I don't believe that. I believe in I'm talking about the first aspect, in the personal things, in relationship with the family. When there are unequally yoked, which is the topic today, these things happen. So Paul is explaining that God has called us to be in peace. That's the important things here. So if they both agree and they get along, don't separate. The Lord wants you to be united. Why separate? You suffer too much. Those that have gone through that experience of a divorce, you know how you suffer. The eye of the storm is on top of you and it doesn't, release you. But if you can function together, stay together. Now, if you separate, then there are certain advice that Paul gives here. Verse 16 says, "For how do you know, O wife, whether you will save your husband?" Save of what? Can a woman save someone? Whom saves is Christ. It's speaking about the second aspect of salvation. So it is to say that a woman can be with a man, because the problem is that in the personal life, there are problems. I know sisters that tell me, "Oh, Apostle, I have to tithe hiding." Don't you see that he's not a believer and he works, and she comes to the ministry and she has to sow hiding? What do you mean? I'm going to work so the apostle can dress like that. That's what he thinks. He don't think about that we pay light here, pay the location. Look at his bling bling. They've told me. A lady here told me, I brought my husband here for the first time, and when he saw you, he said, "I don't have a suit like the apostle." To be married to an unbeliever is a problem. Personally, in the personal relationship, later we're going to talk about the family, and that's another story. And spiritually, that's another story. That is to repeat Calvary. It says, verse 29, "But this I say, brethren, the time is short, so that from now on, even those who have wives, such as those, live as you don't have a wife." What he's saying here, don't mistreat your wife. What it's saying is, do the best you can in the Lord and take care of your family also the best way you can. Those who weep as if they don't weep, and those that rejoice as those that do not rejoice, and those that buy as those that do not possess anything, and those that enjoy this world as if they don't, because the appearance of this world passes. I want you to be without care. He who is unmarried care for the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married, they care for the things of the world and how to please their wife. Because what he's talking about here is the ministry. What he speaks is the commitment to the ministry. So a minister, Paul says, don't get married. But then he also advised that if you are a minister, be a husband of one wife, not have two wives, to have one, because there are ministers that have married twice, but to be the husband of one woman. It says, but I want you to be without care. He who is unmarried cares for the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he who is married cares about the things of the world, how he may please his wife. There is a difference between a wife and a maiden. The unmarried cares for the things of the Lord, in order that she be holy, both in body and spirit. But she that is married cares about the things of the world and how to please her husband. I say this to you for your own benefit, not to put a leash on you, but for what is proper, and so that also you may serve the Lord without distraction. But if any man thinks that it is inappropriate for his daughter, after passing the flower for youth, marry, let him do what he wants. He doesn't sin, let her marry. But he who is steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but has self-dominion, and has determined to turn in his virgin daughter, he does the right thing. But she has to consent, because depends on the customs, because the parents would decide. Customs change. So then he who gives her in marriage does the right thing, and he that doesn't does it even better. If a wife is bound by the law as long as her husband lives, but if her husband marries, she is free from the law. I am happy if she remains that way according to my judgment. And I also think I have the Spirit of God. Well, I've been speaking of three things here for an example, especially those that are called to the ministry. It's very delicate. One time Mary arrived with the disciples as Jesus was teaching in the temple. And Mary told the disciples, listen, tell them that his mom is here. Who? For what was that? I'm telling you, because it seems like Jesus said, listen, mother, when we're home drinking coffee, you're the boss. But here, you know what he told the disciples to tell her? Tell my mother that my mother and father are those that do the will of my Father. As if it's to say, divide, Mary. Do not get involved in this right now. You're my mother, but right now I'm in my Father's business. And also, this ministry is very demanding. For an example, when you have the knowledge of grace, if both are not in accord, it's a big problem. Yes, naturally, be careful, those that are listening to me. Oh, well, I have problems. Well, this is my way out. No. Because Paul says, who knows if you can save your wife or you may save your husband. You should wait a while to understand if that can take place. You can't just make a move, a crazy move. But you're going to have difficulty. That is at a personal level. As a family, listen, sometimes in a family, a couple, he's a believer, she's not a believer, or to the contrary. It doesn't matter if there's an engagement going on. There's not a problem there. No hay problema. There isn't a problem when they buy a beautiful home. No, there's not a problem there. Listen, we just purchased a new car. There's not a problem there. The believer and non-believer are participating. The problem is when, listen, what you're listening to? Well, I'm listening to a cassette of the apostle. Now, again, with that man, they've told me this. I've lived this. Listen, women that are believer and also men that have to purchase headphones to hear my message so my voice is not heard because it bothers them. When it's about family things, the plants and fixing the house, not a problem there. But when we are dealing with the things of the kingdom and revelation, there is problems. And you support them. You're called to support them because you may save them. And the person, I've seen, listen, my husband, he is tremendous with church. Synagogue, but they call it church. And I said, well, what my responsibility is to remove your veil, to save the believer. But let's activate the angels to see if they do something with your husband. Do you have any cassettes you can give me to bring home? Well, take however many you want. Take this one, that one, this one, and the other. And if you can rip the label off, because as soon as they see Growing in Grace or my name, Jose Luis, you're going to have problems. That's where it begins, because I am a stumbling block in that aspect. So therefore, thank God that she came and I told her and used a technique for an example. What do you think what this man is saying there? Because yes, I advise men and women that when they have their spouse in that condition, hey, help me discover if this is false or truth. Don't get on them and say, oh, this is the truth. No, look for a technique. Help me. I don't want to be deceived. Because Paul was wise. With those that were in the law, he'll become as they are to try to win them over. Paul was wise, and you have to be wise also. Listen, sometimes I find people and I ask them questions. As a matter of fact, sometimes I tell them I'm in a ministry that thinks like this, and they don't know that I'm the one from the ministry. As a matter of fact, they're walking with the ministry beside them. But I ask them questions so they can answer me and then look for a form to. So the first night she says, listen, hear this, she says to her husband, because I'm kind of confused. And he begins to listen and she starts to pray, angels, please touch him. And suddenly her husband says, wow, that's a tremendous teaching. And she says, you liked it? That's what I've been looking for the longest. And then he sleep all night. And she says, well, here's another one. Here's another one. That's a great thing when that happens. But if not, it is a problem. Because these things bring about problems. So in a personal level, I've spoken about that. And as a family unit, you expect that in your family. How good it is that when they call you and your son picks up, listen, is your dad there? Yes, who am I speaking with? With so-and-so. And the child says, bless. And they respond, or your daughter says, how are you? I'm reigning in life. I'm telling you this because sometimes I call around the world and to speak to the collaborators, and through the children, you know if the family is growing in grace. When they pick up the phone and say, Apostle, reigning in life, glory to God, calling the things that are not. Wow, they're growing in grace. But when, who do you want? No, can I speak to your dad? A moment. Right? Because let me tell you, this is why this gospel is a gospel of process. You expect that your children, when they pick up the phone, they can respond properly according to the covenant, that they're up to date. You expect that all believe. That's why this word, you share it with the children, because this is a lifestyle. This ain't a religion. You have to deliver them from a very young age. Listen, there are angels with you, and both have to cooperate, because if the husband is not there, the wife is there that takes them to school, angels with you, because you have to nurture them, because if not, they're growing with two different mindsets, inequality, and that brings about problems, and God has called us to be in peace. So therefore, she loves to congregate, or he loves to congregate, and Sundays, she or he want to be here listening to the message. But he wants to wash the car, or maybe she wants to wash the dishes. They don't take time for the spiritual things. What are you doing here today? Huh? Why are you here? Because you are what? A believer. And you've taken time to prepare yourself. You could have been home resting, especially if you worked a lot. But you've taken the time because you're a believer. But if you have a husband or a spouse that doesn't like this, you think he's going to come here for what? For what? If he is incredulous, there's no communion between the light and darkness. He doesn't care. He lives for his belly, for his flesh. What he is interested in is the tangible things. What matters here is cash. You remember that commercial? Listen, look, the next convention is in Brazil. Let's save so we can go on vacation there. Vacation for what? Because the ministry is going to be there. Man, how are you going to take me on a vacation with the ministry? Let's go to the beach. Let's go to Miami, South Beach. What ministry? I tell you, because I've seen that. I've seen couples that what they are waiting for is the next convention so they can use it as vacation. So they use it as vacation during the day. That's why we make it easy. We give 2 or 3 days of seminar during the day. We allow for people to go out to the tourist places, and they go, let's say, Costa Rica to go see the volcanoes, or they go to Guatemala to see Old Town in Guatemala during the day, right? And then the evening, or depends what time of the day, we enjoy our seminars. It's not to be there with a Bible all day. No, we take time to enjoy our lives. But that's if he's a believer. If he's not a believer, he's not going to be interested because they are unequally yoked. So therefore, another thing is that when you say, hey, listen, and what's with this apostle? No, it's that he is the other. The other? What do you mean the other? No, because he is the archangel, the last trump. Be careful with that. You are worshiping that man. No, he is our father. Father was so-and-so. No. Listen, I could show you biblically. No. Don't forget about that. That is a problem. Listen, I've received an email from Colombia that the husband grabbed her by the neck. You leave and take that man out of here. And she says, but don't you understand? He engendered me. He did what? Listen, thank God. Listen, but listen to this. Thank God. There are cases, for an example, I was in Massachusetts, and there's a family, he's from Haiti, married to a Puerto Rican. So then he had a problem with me at a level of jealousy in the flesh. But this time he congregated and he hugged me and said, I'm going to take this word to Haiti. You know why? Because I didn't realize that even though your name bothered me in your messages, you have created a new wife. My wife has been transformed. The love, the respect, the measure. I said, something has got to be going on here. Listen, if this word has not transformed you, then this is a lie. Let's eat and drink because we'll die tomorrow, right? This word transformed lives. This bears witness. Well, let's look to now, because we've been speaking about unequally yoked. That's our topic. There are many questions. Hebrews chapter 13. Verse 4. Marriage is honorable among all. Notice that Paul says it's better you stay single, don't marry. The single man stays single. But now it says it's honorable. Why? Because it is speaking of two different cases here. you know that a community is composed of families. And if there aren't any families, the world is chaos. That's why when I marry a couple, the first thing I do is to congratulate them because they're entering in an order, a spiritual order where it's honorable to marry, especially when two are living together and after a few years they decide to marry. Don't get on their case if they've decided to marry themselves. They're becoming united. Well, I got a call yesterday from someone that said, priest doesn't want to marry me, and a member of your ministry told me they can marry me. And I said, definitely, if he's entering into honor, it is honorable. But priests think if they married them a second time that they're being partakers of an adulteress. You can't do that. He says honorable in all it is to marry. And the bed undefiled, but the fornicators and adulterers, God will judge. The fornicators and adulterers, who will judge them? God. It is to say that God has to judge the adulterous act of Moses because Moses married the daughter of Jethro, and then he appears in the ministry marrying Tartarus. How do you explain that? But who judges that? And you are going to judge it? Don't get into that. You know why? Because God has to justify Moses. Why did that take place? Now, to judge is in a whip, because when you hear judge, they've arrested him. No, to judge it's to divide. When you judge something, you judge it to divide one thing from another. That's why when a judge is judging someone that committed homicide, he hears his testimony. Well, I got back home from my job, they were violating my daughter, and in that instinct of a dad towards a daughter, I hit him over the head and he fell over down the stairwells and he died. The judge says, well, let's give him 6 months of probation. But another one, the same, that killed, let's give him life in prison because the situation is different. So in the case of Moses, that he was the one who laid out the law, imagine Moses says, you shall not commit adultery. And he was the first adulteress. Why? Because there are things you don't understand. Moses married Jethro's daughter, and it seems like she was an unbeliever. Jethro helped him tremendously in many aspects, and they were many years together, but it seems like one day Moses called his wife and told her, listen, Jehovah appeared to me here in this bush, and boiling in fire, he spoke to me and said, go save my people in Egypt. And it seems like she smelled the bush, and she said, it doesn't even smell like it's been burned. But listen, believe that he's spoken to me. I saw fire. They're unequally yoked. So Moses appears married again. What a bad example. You know what it is of a leader representing such a great ministry as the people of Israel. And in the law, even worse. If it was in grace, it's different. But in the law, and here God is judging. The adulteress, do not get involved with that. Let me divide that. Look at David, the man that was conformed to God's heart. Oh, and he commits adultery, and God gives him a son that was Solomon, the most wise man in the earth. What a thing, right? And David was an adulteress, and the adulteress, God will judge. But are you going to judge him? The adulteress, God will judge. I leave this message to the nations. And you don't defend me. You don't have to defend me. Let God do his work, because, listen, he that could not support what has happened to me doesn't deserve to be in this ministry. He doesn't deserve to be because he's judging. But I receive in the Lord that we are all understanders because we are mature people. But to be unequally yoked is a problem. Number one, personally, in a family unit, and spiritually, and God has called us to be in peace. I want peace. I want to live in peace. I want to confess the word. I want to come home and be able to speak of what took place in so-and-so place that, listen, or and that they say, that is the other, that the ones that are around about me don't get offended. What is the idea? Instead of being joyful, right? Blessed with very spiritual blessings. We love you.